The red sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the dusty mining camp as Marcus Johnson walked his daily patrol. His heavy boots crunched on the gravel paths between the metal buildings that housed 3,000 human colonists. The air tasted of rust and chemicals from the mining operations that never stopped, even at night. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter around his muscular frame. The fabric covered the intricate tattoos that decorated his dark arms, designs that told stories. He wished he could forget. At 42 years old, he had been working security for the Stellar Mining Corporation for 5 years now. It was quiet work, and quiet was exactly what he wanted. The planet was home to more than just humans. The Zephyrians had lived here for thousands of years before the first human ships arrived. They were tall, graceful beings with silver skin and large black eyes. Most humans found them unsettling to look at, but Marcus had learned to appreciate their calm nature. They rarely caused trouble, preferring to keep to their own settlements in the northern mountains, but things had been changing lately. Marcus stopped at the main gate of the colony and nodded to the young guard on duty. "Everything quiet tonight?" "Danny?" "Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson. Haven't seen any Zephyrians since yesterday morning." They used to come by every few days to trade, but not anymore. Danny was barely 20, fresh from Earth, and still excited about being on an alien world. Marcus frowned. The Zephyrians staying away was not a good sign. In his experience, when locals started avoiding human settlements, it usually meant trouble was coming. His radio crackled to life. "Marcus, come to the main office. We've got a situation." The voice belonged to Captain Sam Bennett, his boss, and the head of colony security. Marcus made his way through the empty streets to the administrative building. Inside, he found Sam pacing behind his desk, his face tight with worry. Sam was a good man, but he had never been in real combat. This mining colony was supposed to be his easy retirement job. "What's going on, Sam?" "Sit down, Marcus. I just got a call from corporate headquarters on Earth. 3 settlements in the Outer Rim have gone dark in the past week. No communication. No response to emergency signals." Marcus felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Raiders? That's what we thought at first. But when they sent scout ships to investigate, they found something strange. The settlements weren't looted or destroyed. They were just empty. All the people were gone, but nothing else was touched. Equipment, supplies, everything was still there. What about the Zephyrians in those areas? That's the weird part. The Zephyrian settlements nearby were completely untouched. It's like whoever did this was only interested in humans. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the mining equipment continued its endless work under the alien stars. He had come to this distant world to escape his past, but it seemed like violence had a way of finding him no matter how far he ran. "There's more," Sam continued. "Corporate is sending a special response team to investigate. Military types? They'll be here tomorrow." Marcus turned back to his boss. "What kind of military types?" "Navy Special Operations. Elite soldiers." The message said they're experienced in dealing with hostile alien encounters. The cold feeling in Marcus's stomach grew stronger. Elite military units meant serious trouble. It also meant his carefully constructed peaceful life was about to become very complicated. "I want you to work with them when they arrive," Sam said. "You're the only one here with real military experience. These mining engineers and technicians won't be much help if things get dangerous." Marcus nodded slowly. He had hoped his fighting days were behind him forever, but it looked like the galaxy had other plans. As he walked back to his small apartment, he unconsciously rubbed his left arm, where the most detailed of his tattoos lay hidden beneath his jacket. Some secrets were harder to bury than others. Tomorrow, everything would change. The military transport ship landed at dawn with a thunderous roar that shook the entire mining colony. Marcus watched from the landing pad as the sleek black vessel settled onto the reinforced concrete. Steam hissed from its engines as the ship powered down after its long journey from Earth. The cargo bay doors opened with a mechanical whine, and 6 figures in dark combat gear emerged. They moved with the precise, controlled steps that Marcus recognized immediately. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were elite operators. The kind of men who could disappear into any environment and complete missions that others would consider impossible. Their leader stepped forward and removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face with intelligent brown eyes. He was Hispanic, probably in his mid-30s, with the kind of calm confidence that came from years of dangerous work. Marcus could see the man scanning the area, taking in every detail of the colony's defenses and layout in seconds. Captain Sam Bennett hurried forward to greet the new arrivals. "Welcome to Kepler 442b. I'm Captain Bennett, Colony Security Chief. Thank you for coming so quickly." "Lieutenant Commander Jake Martinez, Navy Special Operations," the leader replied, extending his hand. "This is my team. We're here to investigate the missing settlements and assess the threat level." Sam gestured toward Marcus. "This is Marcus Johnson, my best security officer. He has military experience and knows this planet better than anyone." Jake turned to look at Marcus, and their eyes met for the first time. Marcus felt a familiar tension, the way soldiers sized each other up when they first met. But something else flickered in Jake's expression, something that made Marcus's pulse quicken. "Pleasure to meet you," Jake said, stepping forward with his hand extended. Marcus reached out to shake it, and as he did, his jacket sleeve pulled back slightly. For just a moment, the edge of his tattoo became visible. It was only a small portion, but it showed the distinctive talons of an eagle gripping what looked like a broken chain. Jake's hand froze halfway to Marcus's. His eyes locked onto the exposed ink, and Marcus watched the color drain from the Navy SEAL's face. Jake's mouth opened slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. "Is everything all right, Commander?" Sam asked, noticing the strange pause. Jake blinked hard and forced himself to complete the handshake. "Yes, sorry. Just tired from the journey." But his eyes never left Marcus's arm, and Marcus could see the wheels turning in the younger man's mind. Marcus quickly pulled his sleeve down and stepped back. "We should get you and your team settled in. I'm sure you want to start your investigation as soon as possible." "Right," Jake said slowly, still staring at Marcus with a mixture of shock and disbelief. "That would be good." As they walked toward the administrative building, Jake fell into step beside Marcus while his team followed with Sam. "That's an interesting tattoo," Jake said quietly, his voice carefully controlled. "Just some old artwork," Marcus replied, keeping his tone casual. "Got it done years ago. The detail work is impressive. Very specific design, eagle and chains, right? Must have taken a long time." Marcus felt sweat forming on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Something like that." Jake nodded slowly, but his expression remained troubled. "You know, I've seen similar work before. There was this story we heard during training about a soldier who had tattoos that told the story of a legendary mission. Something about coordinates and symbols that marked a place where impossible things happened." "Sounds like military folklore to me," Marcus said, but his voice came out tighter than he intended. "Maybe," Jake replied. "But the instructors who told that story seemed to believe it was real. They said the soldier in question was the kind of man who could hold off an entire army by himself. A ghost who appeared when things looked hopeless, and disappeared when the job was done." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face Jake directly. The two men stared at each other in silence for several long seconds. Around them, the mining colony continued its normal morning routine completely, unaware of the tension building between the two soldiers. "Commander Martinez," Marcus said quietly, "I think we need to talk." That evening, Marcus led Jake to an abandoned storage facility on the edge of the mining colony. The old building was filled with broken equipment and dusty crates that nobody had touched in years. It was the kind of place where two men could talk without being overheard. Jake closed the door behind them and activated a small device that would block any electronic listening equipment. He had come prepared for this conversation. "Show me the rest of it," Jake said without preamble. Marcus stood silent for a long moment, then slowly removed his jacket. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing the full extent of the tattoo work that covered both arms. The designs were incredibly detailed, telling a story in symbols and images that few people would understand. Jake stepped closer, his eyes following the intricate patterns. On Marcus's left arm, an eagle with spread wings clutched a broken chain in its talons. Below it were coordinates that Jake recognized immediately. On the right arm, a series of small symbols marked different battles and missions, but one stood out above all the others. It was a single tower surrounded by curved lines that represented sand dunes. "The Tower of Kandahar," Jake whispered. "You're really him." "You're the ghost." Marcus rolled his sleeves back down. "That man died 20 years ago. I'm just a mining security guard now." "Bullshit," Jake said, but his voice held respect rather than anger. "I studied that mission in advanced tactics class. Every special operations soldier in the military knows the story." One Marine, cut off from his unit, held a defensive position for 3 days against impossible odds. 50 enemies, maybe more. Limited ammunition, no backup, protecting a village full of civilians. "The official reports were classified," Marcus said. "The reports were, but stories have a way of spreading. Instructors used your tactics as examples of perfect defensive fighting. They called you the Ghost of Kandahar because you seemed to be everywhere at once, picking off enemies from positions that should have been impossible to reach." Marcus walked to the window and looked out at the red alien sunset. "It wasn't heroic, Jake. It was just survival. I did what I had to do to keep those people alive. You saved 200 civilians. Children, old people, families who had nowhere else to go. The enemy force was there to wipe out that entire village. And after it was over, the government wanted to turn me into a symbol. Medal ceremonies, recruitment videos, public appearances. They wanted to use my face to sell their war. Marcus turned back to face Jake, so I disappeared. Made it look like I died in a helicopter crash 6 months later. Took a new identity and came out here to the frontier." Jake shook his head in amazement. "Do you have any idea how many young soldiers joined the Marines because of stories about you? How many people you inspired?" "I never wanted to inspire anyone. I wanted to stop the killing and find some peace." "And did you? Find peace?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I thought I had. This place was quiet, simple. The Zephyrians are good people. The work was honest. Nobody knew who I was or what I had done. But now something is hunting humans on these outer worlds," Jake said. "And somehow I don't think it's a coincidence that we ended up here, talking to you." Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders again. "What do you mean?" Jake pulled out a data tablet and showed Marcus a series of reports. "The missing settlements weren't random targets. We analyzed the personnel records of all 3 colonies. Each one had at least 5 military veterans living there. Combat veterans from Earth's recent conflicts." "You think someone is specifically targeting former soldiers?" "I think someone is hunting down the most dangerous humans they can find. Veterans who know how to fight, how to organize resistance, how to turn ordinary colonists into effective defenders." Marcus studied the data on the tablet. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. "They're cutting off the heads before they attack the body." "Exactly. And if I'm right about who you are, then you're not just on their list. You're probably at the top of it." The 2 men stood in silence as the implications sank in. Outside, the mining colony continued its peaceful evening routine, unaware that it might be harboring the most wanted human in this part of the galaxy. "So what do we do?" Marcus asked finally. Jake smiled grimly. "We give them what they're looking for, but not in the way they expect." Marcus looked at the younger soldier and saw something familiar in his eyes. It was the same determination he had once carried himself, the willingness to face impossible odds to protect innocent people. "You have a plan," Marcus said. "I'm working on it, but I'll need the Ghost of Kandahar, not the mining security guard." Marcus closed his eyes and felt 20 years of careful peace slipping away. When he opened them again, Jake saw something. Dangerous awakening in the older man's expression. "Then you better hope you're ready for what that means." The next morning brought disturbing news. Jake's team had spent the night analyzing data from the 3 missing colonies, and what they found changed everything. Marcus sat in the briefing room with Jake and his 5 team members. The walls were covered with maps, photographs, and data screens showing the locations of the attacks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the colony's chief administrator, had joined them after Jake explained the seriousness of the situation. "Tell them what you found," Jake said to his communications specialist. A young woman named Amy Foster. Amy stood up and pointed to the main display screen. "We managed to recover partial communication logs from one of the attacked settlements, just before they went dark. The transmission was heavily damaged, but we were able to clean up enough to understand what happened." She pressed a button, and a crackling voice filled the room. The words were broken and filled with static, but the fear was clear. Double quotes, ... not random raiders, ... do, who to take ... had our military records somehow ... asking for specific people by name ... the veterans first, then anyone with combat training. The transmission dissolved into static and then silence. Marcus felt his blood turn cold. "They have our records?" "It gets worse," Jake said. "Amy, show them the other thing." Amy switched to a different file. This time it was a clearer recording, but the voice was not human. It was the melodic, musical tone of a Zephyrian speaker. "The tall walking fighters from the war-world Earth must be found and removed. Their presence brings the taste of violence to our peaceful sky. The broken chain, warrior most of all, his shadow carries the death of thousands." Dr. Rodriguez gasped. "That's Zephyrian High Council formal speech." "Only their leaders use that kind of language." Marcus stood up slowly. "Broken chain warrior. They know about my tattoo." Jake nodded. Grimly, somehow the Zephyrians got access to classified Earth military databases. They've been studying our war records, learning about human combat veterans, and they've identified you as their primary target. But why? Elena asked. Zephyrians on this planet have always been peaceful. They've never shown any aggression toward humans. Amy pulled up another file. "We found this in their communication networks. It's a historical record that explains everything." The screen showed images of a beautiful blue and green world, with silver cities that sparkled like jewels. Then the images changed, showing the same world covered in smoke and fire. This was the original Zephyrian homeworld, called Saranthala in their language. 200 years ago, it was invaded by a species called the Karnathi. The Karnathi were warriors, fighters who conquered worlds for resources and territory. Marcus studied the images of destruction. What happened? The Zephyrians had no military, no weapons, no knowledge of warfare. They were completely peaceful, just like the ones we know here. The Karnathi wiped out most of their population and destroyed their civilization. The survivors scattered across the galaxy, settling on worlds like this one. Jake took over the explanation. Ever since then, the Zephyrians have lived in terror of another warrior species finding them. When humans arrived and they learned about our military history, our wars, our weapons, they saw us as the same threat that destroyed their homeworld. They're not evil, Elena said quietly. They're just scared. Scared enough to start a war to prevent a war, Marcus said. They think if they eliminate all human combat veterans, they can keep their new world safe. Amy brought up one more file. This is the worst part. According to what we've intercepted, they're not just targeting this sector. They've sent hunter teams to every human colony within 50 light years. Hundreds of settlements, thousands of veterans. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. There's something else, Jake said finally. They know Marcus is here. We intercepted a message this morning. A Zephyrian strike team is already on their way to this colony. Marcus felt the familiar calm that came before battle settling over. How long do we have? Based on their ship's speed, maybe 18 hours? And how many are coming? Jake hesitated. 12. All armed with advanced weapons specifically designed to counter human combat tactics. They've been studying our methods, Marcus. They know how we fight. Marcus walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful mining colony. In 18 hours, this quiet place would become a battlefield. Innocent people would be caught in the crossfire between human soldiers and alien hunters. We need to evacuate the civilians, he said. There's no time, Jake replied. And nowhere to send them. The transport ships are all on other routes. Marcus turned back to face the group. Then we make our stand here. But not the way they expect. What do you mean? Elena asked. Marcus looked at each person in the room, his expression hard and determined. They're coming here to kill the ghost of Kandahar, so let's give them exactly what they want. Marcus stood alone in the abandoned mining sector, 5 miles from the main colony. The old extraction site was a maze of tunnels and broken machinery, perfect for what he had planned. His rifle hung loose in his hands as he waited in the artificial twilight created by the overhead metal structures. Jake's voice crackled through his earpiece. Marcus, are you sure about this? We can find another way. No, we can't, Marcus replied quietly. They want me and they'll tear apart the whole colony. To find me, this is the only way to keep the civilians safe. Jake and his team were hidden 2 miles away, close enough to provide support, but far enough to avoid the initial trap. The plan was simple. Marcus would draw the Zephyrian strike team into the mining tunnels where their advanced weapons would be less effective in the tight spaces. Then Jake's team would move in to help finish them off. Remember, Marcus said, don't move until you hear my signal. These aren't scared civilians or peaceful traders. These are trained killers who've been studying human combat tactics for months. Through his scope, Marcus spotted movement on the ridge above the mining site. 12 figures in dark armor were approaching with the fluid grace that all Zephyrians possessed. Even from a distance, he could see the strange weapons they carried. The guns were unlike anything in human arsenals, with curved barrels and energy cells that glowed with soft blue light. Marcus keyed his radio one last time. They're here. Going silent now. He switched off his communication device and melted back into the shadows of the mining equipment. For the first time in 20 years, the ghost of Kandahar was about to go to work. The Zephyrians moved down into the mining site with perfect coordination. They had clearly studied the layout in advance and knew exactly where they were going. Marcus watched them split into 3 groups of 4, each taking a different route through the maze of metal and stone. He waited until the first group was directly below his position, then made his move. The shot was perfect, dropping the lead Zephyrian instantly. Before the others could react, Marcus was already moving to a new position. The aliens shouted to each other in their musical language, but Marcus could hear the confusion in their voices. He was not where their intelligence reports said he should be. The second shot came from a completely different angle, taking down another alien. The remaining Zephyrians began firing their energy weapons, but they were shooting at empty air. Marcus had already moved again for the next 10 minutes. Marcus led the aliens deeper into the tunnels, picking them off one by one. His movements were smooth and calculated, each shot followed by immediate relocation. He used every piece of cover, every shadow, every trick he had learned during 20 years of combat. But the Zephyrians were learning too. When Marcus moved to take his 8th shot, 3 energy beams converged on his position simultaneously. He rolled away just as the metal beam he had been hiding behind melted into slag. The aliens had figured out his pattern. Clever, Marcus muttered to himself as he scrambled through a narrow maintenance tunnel. The Zephyrians were adapting faster than he had expected. He emerged from the tunnel to find himself face to face with 2 Zephyrian warriors. Their large black eyes showed no emotion as they raised their weapons. Marcus dove sideways, his rifle barking twice as he hit the ground. Both aliens fell, but not before one of their energy beams grazed his shoulder. Pain shot through Marcus's arm, and he could smell burned flesh. The Zephyrian weapons were designed to cause maximum damage to human tissue. He gritted his teeth and kept moving. 4 aliens down, 8 to go. But now they knew where he was. The remaining Zephyrians closed in from all directions, their weapons creating a deadly crossfire in the narrow tunnels. Marcus found himself trapped in a small chamber with only one exit, and that way was blocked by 3 armed aliens. He keyed his emergency beacon, sending the signal for Jake's team to move in. But they were still minutes away, and Marcus was running out of ammunition. As the Zephyrians moved closer, their weapons charging with deadly energy, Marcus realized that this might be where the ghost of Kandahar finally met his match. The aliens had come prepared for a legend and they just might succeed in ending one.